Good morning and welcome to Rising. The potato famine was a British-fueled genocide. and Kim, you know who agrees with me? President Joe Biden.
Okay.
Kim is the only one participating in the holiday.
Yes. You know what this means?
What's that?
I get to pinch you. These guys didn't wear green.
I know, I totally forgot.
Oh my
I
gosh.
should have worn a green tie.
I cannot believe you guys.
Both of us
Purple,
forgot.
maroon. What in the world is going on here?
Too early in the morning to remember
Oh,
anything like that.
jeez.
That actually is
You
the
guys
case.
owe me a beer, a green one.
But no, here we do have Joe Biden. Let's see can we run that clip?
Mr. Biden, a quick word for the BBC.
The BBC, I'm Irish.
Oh, Joe.
Is he even Irish? Is he actually Irish?
Totally Irish.
Okay, just making sure,
believe
because
so.
sometimes he tells fibs.
Anyway.
His father was English, and his grandmother once told him, Joe, your father's English, but it's not his fault, and he's not a bad man.
Oh, wow. Well, we have New York Assemblyman Ron Kim, who will join us to discuss the Cuomo brothers' latest updates, and then Lucas Kuntz will discuss how American oil companies could tackle gas prices.
But first, President Biden authorized an additional $800 million in new security assistance to Ukraine. Let's watch.
Delegation of authority under Section 506A1 of the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961, translated into plain English, a total of $800 million in defense aid.
So this comes after Ukrainian President Zelensky's heartfelt address to Congress and plea for more aid. And while Zelensky won't get a no-fly zone, he will get more money, drones, anti-armor systems, anti-aircraft systems, and small arms, plus plenty of ammunition. This comes as Ukraine and Russia are in negotiations for a peace plan that includes a ceasefire and Russian withdrawal if Kiev declares neutrality and accepts limits on its armed forces, renounces ambitions to join NATO, and gives Russians legal status in Ukraine. Just yesterday, Ukrainian officials accused Russians of an airstrike on a theater where hundreds of displaced people were sheltering. It's unclear how many people died in this attack. Very, very tragic. War is the worst.
Terrible.
Absolutely terrible. So it's interesting, Zelensky gives this address, says he wants a no-fly zone. And then he says, okay, if you're not going to give me a no-fly zone, then at least give me some jets. And I don't think we're giving him the jets, or we're definitely not giving him the no-fly zone. I don't think we're also giving him the jets. So they're instead giving him a bunch of really so it's a defense equipment. Mm-hmm. So really they're just giving Ukraine the ability. I mean, they're clearly not, these types of weapons you don't give to somebody you think is going to win. You give them to hold off.
Yeah.
You're fighting, you're just trying to keep them at bay a little bit, and maybe that is in order to facilitate more negotiation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole strategy, right? I mean, it's a defensive, there's a small chance of Ukraine triumphing and defeating Russia right quickly, like a very small chance of that. I don't think it's impossible, but it's pretty unlikely. So yeah, they just got to hold out until negotiations.
Yeah, and I'll talk about this more in my radar, but the logistics of the plane situation are complicating this. We kind of like to think here in terms of somebody asks for something, they can have it immediately. Same day delivery, like Ukraine has Prime, and just all of a sudden a whole bunch of fighter jets are going to show up.
Right.
They don't have people who are trained to fly American fighter jets.
So Americans would have to be flying those jets. That's the problem.
Which now we're at war with Russia.
Right.
Okay. So then that's why they came up with this workaround where they said, okay, well, give us these MiGs, because we do have some pilots who are trained how to fly the MiGs. Polish will give us the MiGs. You'll trade American planes to the Polish, everybody wins. And then they figured, wait a minute, how are we going to get these planes into Ukraine? If you put them on trucks and drive them in, they're just going to get lit up on the ground. If you fly them in, now NATO is flying fighter jets into Ukraine, and Poland is now a target.
Unless you could get Ukrainian pilots out into Poland.
The problem is they still would be taking off from
Poland. Yeah. So it's
all of this is absurd. It's a war.
Yeah.
But
what
has
counts
agreed on the same
as
absurd rules.
Right. As now it's actually us doing it rather than someone else is totally absurd.
And Psaki also pointed out yesterday that Ukraine has multiple squadrons that they're not using, and that almost all of the assaults that Russia is carrying out are coming from the land. They're firing missiles mostly. And cruise missiles, and a no-fly zone isn't going to do anything about that.
That's true. Yeah.
But we'll see how these negotiations go. There's some things that the Russians are asking for that, could maybe be. So they want recognition of Crimea as Russian. They want recognition of
Which is going to happen. Like, come on. Like, it's over.
Right, it should happen, but but for whatever reason, the Ukrainians are holding on to that. And Crimea is historically actually Russian. It was given to it was given to Ukraine not actually that long ago in the 50s.
All of it's back and forth over the last 150 years.
Right.
1,000 years.
But like so much of Europe.
Yeah.
Particularly that part of Europe.
Yeah.
And the people there in Crimea overwhelmingly want to be with Russia anyway. So that's going to be a tough sell, I think, in general, to get for Ukraine to say no, we're gonna continue with. But then again, they've got a lot of pressure from the West.
That's the easiest one for them to give up.
That is the easiest one to give up.
It's already de facto Russian.
Totally right. But Donbass region is another area they're wanting in the negotiations for them to declare. But I think a lot of this stuff, Russia seems to be throwing out a lot of stuff that is probably negotiable to some degree. And so I think there is some wiggle room. They're definitely not going to bend on the NATO issue. They're not bending on that.
Right.
Well,
but
Zelenskyy already bent.
But so
Ukraine
has bent.
Right, Ukraine is doing that.
Mean Russia
will not bend on the NATO issue.
Yeah.
So they're saying you have to do that.
Zelenskyy already gave in on that.
And Russia's not going to bend on the military capacity of Ukraine. They do not want Ukraine to have some high-powered weapons from the West.
Right, and it seems like the way that'll be negotiated is in exchange, Ukraine would get security guarantees
from Russia,
from NATO, but from NATO and from Russia. But the security guarantee from Russia would be we promise not to invade. But the guarantee from NATO would be like, we'll defend you in these particular ways. And that's where they're going to have to negotiate, because you don't want it to be a NATO type. So Russia doesn't want it to be membership in NATO.
Right.
But they have allowed the possibility of some type of security cooperation, the way that Finland.
But what a sort of irrational or contrary even to the stated goals of Russia to put them in this situation. As a result of this action, Ukraine doesn't get NATO membership, but they weren't really going to get NATO membership probably anyway. Instead, they're going to get a series of greater entanglements and defensive arrangements with NATO countries.
Yes.
Not possibly, yeah.
So what is Russia doing? This is what's going to come of this.
Putin also produced a sense of Ukrainian nationalism that is much more profound than it was even a month ago.
Yes, Zelensky's a saint. His sainthood.
Right,
now.
he was at 22% approval rating.
Yeah, nobody liked him.
Yeah,
right. The Ukrainians never really trusted their government. In fact, when the
that's why Zelenskyy won.
Right, and when there was the vaccine rollout, and there was a very low uptake in Ukraine, and people were asking why, and then they would do surveys, and they would find out that the Ukrainians just didn't trust their government. That 70-something% of them were like, we just don't trust these people. So what they tell us to do, we don't really want to do.
They're not wrong. I don't trust our government.
Their government?
I don't know
any
enough
government.
About I don't trust any
Their government is very corrupt. They're one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and they have been for a while. They're run by either Russian-backed oligarchs or Western-backed oligarchs. But either way, the people are not running their country. But we're claiming that we're there for democracy. But I don't know how much democracy they have.
Well, and that's why Zelenskyy was able to power through, a guy who had absolutely zero political experience.
That can happen in democracies too, though.
Right. Yes.
But they're like, it's a joke, so why don't we just get a comedian for a president?
Yeah. Imagine if the U.S. did that.
How strange that would be.
Yeah, reality television stars or things. Yeah.
So strange.
Okay.
Anyway, yesterday we discussed the media being overexcited about the prospect of war. According to a Pew poll shown on MSNBC, 35% of Americans support taking military action even if it risks nuclear conflict, while an overwhelming majority supports sanctions and admitting refugees. So I talked to Congressman Ro Khanna about Zelenskyy and Biden's negotiations earlier this week. The congressman said, quote, "We should aggressively be encouraging diplomacy and fully support Zelenskyy in reaching whatever settlement he sees achievable to save Ukrainian lives." And I do think this is a key question. If Zelenskyy is the one, is on the pedestal that we've put him on, then don't we also need to empower him to fully negotiate with Putin? Because if he goes into negotiations with Russia, or his people go into negotiations, and they're not empowered to lift sanctions or to otherwise speak on behalf of the coalition that's supporting him, then how does he even how do they get taken seriously in that room?
But I think that is the case, isn't it? He is empowered. We've said that we will lift the sanctions.
Blinken said yesterday morning that Putin would need to show irreversible commitments for us to lift the sanctions. So what does that mean?
We don't even show irreversible
what does that mean?
commitments.
What does that mean?
That means you can't back out of an Iran deal.
Right. Yes. Right. So what?
No, we know how these commitments work. We know they're not irreversible.
Yeah. Right. And so so there's a nervousness among some watchers of the situation who say that the U.S. and the EU are going to keep a lot of these sanctions in place because they're beneficial. They believe that they're beneficial.
That would be incredibly foolish to do that because they're not beneficial.
It'd be throwing Ukraine into a meat grinder.
Yeah.
It would be bad for Ukraine. It also continues to affect our gas prices, other things like that.
Wheat prices.
Puts us at war footing with Russia. So that is just it is such a bad idea that only our government could come up with it. But
yeah, all of these, so many of these governments that believe in this realpolitik, zero sum. If our enemy
how many
is
times
getting
do they
hurt.
have to be discredited? Once again, I guess.
It's one planet, man.
One planet. What do you think about this poll showing that 35% of people or whatever?
Insane. Who are these people? Why are these 30? That is a lot of people.
That shows the power of the media, too.
Oh my gosh, that would be willing to go to nuclear war. Are you kidding me over this? I mean, here's the thing with this conflict. I mean, I get it. We're all very sympathetic towards Ukraine. This is a terrible humanitarian crisis. War is terrible. But, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, there isn't a lot of difference between living in Russia and living in Ukraine. That, to me, is a fact. There's just not a whole lot of difference for the people that are in these countries. And so a country, if worst case scenario, Russia takes all of Ukraine, decides to bring it back into the Russian fold, let's say that, I don't think that's what Russia's planning on doing, but let's just say it goes to that and it's being run by Russia. What do you think is going to happen to the average Ukrainian? Do you think they would notice a difference between living under a Ukrainian corrupt oligarch or living under a Russian oligarch? I don't think their lives drastically change enough for us to say it's worth bombing you. Like for me to say, all right, Ryan, I'm going to let you and your family potentially get nuked because a Ukrainian might have a Russian government. It's just not different enough. If it were maybe, let's say, China coming in to France and taking over France, that is a drastic difference for the people of France, I would say. So that would be...
But still not our problem. Now, we've made it our problem because France is a NATO country.
There has to be some kind of limiting principle, though. Eventually, you have to say, okay, Russia can't have that. We have to risk nuclear. If they invade America, right?
It would have to be.
It wouldn't be so different to live under Russia than our current government, I guess. But
I think it would be. I would personally fight Russia if they came to our shores. I would pick up a gun myself and I would start fighting it because I don't want to live under that type of government.
I'd like to see that.
I'm from Idaho. Listen, but look, if it was like an actual genocide, if there was something really, really atrocious that was going on, and we have those conflicts that are actually going on around the world, and we're not doing anything about those conflicts. Yet, Ukraine that maybe might go under Russian control, which, by the way, it's been under Russian control for practically its entire existence, up until only how many years ago? 30-something years ago, it finally got some sort of independence to some level.
And so they had some independence during World War II, and some of it. I mean, they've been occupied by a lot of different people, so their lives are not drastically. It's just not different enough for me to say it's worth blowing up American families over. Well, I mean, basically nothing's worth nuclear war. I mean, that's the end.
Well,
that's it.
I agree. Nuclear war is definitely, to me, seems to be off the table.
But if we just say nothing's worth nuclear war, then we give up.
We should.
I mean, I'm not a very hawkish person, but don't we just say then, okay, we won't do anything if any evil country with nukes.
Right. It would have to be.
We will never do
really
anything.
Atrocious. Like they would have to be like gassing people, dropping chemical weapons and killing off entire cities for me to say.
Then we nuke the planet.
Well, you would nuke the bad guys.
I mean, the bad guys.
I'm definitely not. I'm a total anti-war person, but still, to me, it has to be that bad in order for us to go to that level.
I'm an anti-war person, but we're allowed to defend ourselves, and we're allowed to defend countries.
But nuclear war over a corrupt government going from a country that has been corrupt going from one level.
We all agree, and most people agree. Even 35% is a lot, but that's still a minority. Most people don't want to have nuclear war over
take that.
Yeah.
Those are really high numbers.
2-1 against nuclear war. We'll take that.
We have to somehow.
If they invaded France, we would nuke them, right? We would. I would support doing that. I mean,
but then we'd all die.
No,
committed to.
I agree.
We would not. They can't. We would not all die. They can't.
But the other limiting
they can't hit us.
It would definitely be enough for maybe a no-fly. I don't know.
The limiting capacity, though, to answer your question, it's not a theoretical question. It's a practical one. Russia hasn't gotten into Kyiv yet. They're not getting to Paris.
I don't think they're trying to get into the cities. I actually think they're just trying to circle them and suffocate, like squeeze them because they're trying to negotiate. I don't think Russia wants to take Ukraine. I don't think that's their plan. I think they want Crimea. They want the Donbass region. I don't think they've ever had I know that's what a lot of people here think. They're trying to grab territory and take Ukraine. I don't think that was ever their plan.
I think they wanted. Yeah, well, we disagree. I think they wanted Zelenskyy out, or I thought maybe they would take enough of the country where his government would flee, like the Afghanistan government.
He's not a powerful government. He's just a puppet. So they don't care about him.
Well, now he's a powerful figure. Now he's an extremely powerful figure.
He might be a meme, but that's it. He's not really actually running that country.
If you have the support of your people, which war brings to you, and especially if you perform well during war,
they've made him much more powerful than he was.
That's real power.
Before.
He's really still at the
They made him
behest
an
of Western
internationally
governments.
important figure.
He is a puppet to the West, and that's what he is, and that's what that government has been since the coup that was, backed by the U.S. in 2014. We put in Western-backed leaders, and they're really just puppets for the West. So he's doing what the West wants and doing what the West says. I don't think he's really that powerful.
Well,
I think Russia's negotiating with us.
Putin might have liked to think that, and it may have even been true in the past. But Putin's own actions have created him now as a powerful
I don't know
figure.
if he's powerful, but he's a hero, for sure.
No, I mean, if you have the support of your nation, that's where political power comes from.
Yeah.
Now, it's Ukraine, it's not China, it's not Russia, it's not the United States, so he's not a major power.
Right.
But he is a powerful political figure, and he's on the world stage at this point. I mean, and you can see it in the way that the U.S. media is finally deciding to spell his name correctly. There was even an impeachment over him being shaken down by Trump.
Yep.
And they didn't bother to spell his name right at that point. But now, they're like, oh, somebody check his name. Oh, shoot, there's two Y's at the end. Okay, he's earned that. So he's earned his name being spelled correctly, which is its own form of
But that's
power.
still, from our side, our perspective, I don't know what the Ukrainian people think about him. That would be interesting to...
I mean, the polls
like him. They would like to stop being killed by Russia. I think they would like that.
I think that there's probably strong support for that among the Ukrainian
strong
people.
Strong support for stop killing us.
But we'll see how much of the southern portion of Ukraine Russia actually does give back. So yes, maybe they don't take the entire thing, but I think all of that area around the Black Sea, they're going to try to hold on to. There's enormous natural gas in the Black Sea that they tried to negotiate for.
Right.
Didn't. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how much they...
Well, coming up next, we'll tell you what's on our radars. Stick around for that.